afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. On behalf of the Center for Urban Language Teaching and Research at Georgia State University, I'll welcome you to the 7th annual World Languages Week. CULTR, as the center is known, is one of 16 federally funded Title VI language resource centers in the United States. CULTR has created a unique identity around serving the needs of all students and the communities they represent by helping to promote language learning opportunities as part of 21st century global education. Guided by its core values of access, advocacy, outreach, and research, CULTR has gained a national reputation of innovative approaches to promoting access to language education for all students, regardless of their socioeconomic and ethnic background. I am Matias Guerrero Heres, lecturer of French at Georgia State University, where I coordinate the French for International Business program. I'd like to thank you for being here with us today for the Humanitarian and Global Health panel, which I will be moderating. Before introducing the panelists, I'd like to address a couple of housekeeping and technical questions. First, I would like to remind everyone that all panels this week are being recorded and will be available after the event. All attendees will remain muted throughout the entire session. If for some reason your connection is interrupted at any point during the panel discussion, simply rejoin with the same link that you used previously. Our panel discussion today will last for approximately 40 minutes and will be followed by a Q&A with you, the attendees. Participants may submit questions throughout the course of the discussion and after the discussion using the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. If you like questions you see, click the thumbs up icon to promote the question to the top of the list, and we will ask your questions to our panelists during the last 20 minutes of our discussion. If you're posing a question to a particular panelist, we ask that you please mention her name in your question. This panel session will conclude at 3 p.m. Now let's start the discussion with our panelists. We have today Ladarian Gillette, who's a program manager at CARE USA. Ladarian, thank you very much for joining us today. And we also have Jackie Valadez, who's a diversity recruiter at Peace Corps. So Jackie, thank you also for joining us today. Instead of introducing the panelists myself, I thought it would be more interesting for the audience if the panelists introduce themselves. So panelists, would you mind telling us a little bit more about you, the organization you work for, and your current position? Ladarian, would you like to start?
Sure, I'll jump in first. Thanks so much. And
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar for today. My name is Ladarian Gillette. I'm a program manager for CARE's Innovation Hub. So I'm originally from Indiana. I moved down here a few years ago. I'm not going to tell you guys how long it's been, but I graduated from Spelman for undergrad, and then I went to Emory for graduate school. And my background is in international studies and international law. So currently with CARE, although I have an international background, I work on their US programs and policy team. So if you all are familiar with it, CARE is headquartered here in Atlanta. We were founded in 1945, right after World War II. If you've ever received a CARE package, now you know where the term came from. It came from CARE. It originally started as a way for American families to send over care packages to European families after the war. Since then, we've transformed more into a humanitarian aid or international development organization specializing in focus areas around women and girls. So water and sanitation issues, reproductive health issues, economic empowerment. We just started working here in the United States in 2019. So the US programs team is fairly new. We have two programs, one that's more of like a microfinance program, and another one that deals around food security and job creation around the gig economy. So it's really cool to have an international background, but to work for an international organization that now works here in the United States. So glad to be here with you all today, and I'm looking forward to you all's questions. Jackie, over to you.
Thanks, Ladarian. I think we're taking over your role, Matias, but hey, I'm for it. My name is Jackie Valadez. My pronouns are she, her. I am a diversity recruiter for the Peace Corps. So in my role, I support in sharing Peace Corps to populations who were historically excluded from the opportunity of Peace Corps. In terms of what Peace Corps is, we are a federal agency. And we primarily work overseas. That is our focus. And we work in building capacity with countries who have specifically requested the Peace Corps support, anywhere from youth development to health, to agriculture, education, you name it. So we're always looking for wonderful, we are always looking for qualified candidates. So my role is to share Peace Corps as a potential opportunity for anyone involved. For anyone who's interested in being involved with us. And I'm excited to share more today with everyone.
Thank you very much, Ladarian and Jackie, for introducing yourselves. And thank you also for joining us today, for your time. We really, really appreciate it. So I'd like to start this session by discussing the importance of language proficiency and cultural awareness in today's global workforce. These are two skills that are often associated with one another, and they're often taught together in my field, which is language education. That being said, it's important to remember that those are two different skills. In fact, you can be proficient in a language, but you may not be able to communicate successfully with the speaker, some of the speakers of this language. So I was wondering if you could tell us more about the role that language proficiency and cultural awareness play in your field and in your current position, and also how does it play a role in the recruitment process in your organization? Jackie, would you like to start?
Sure, I can go ahead and answer this question. So language proficiency and culture proficiency are really important in the Peace Corps for us. An individual who decides to apply for the Peace Corps and is accepted will work for 27 months in a different country. So you can imagine, to create a project, to even connect with someone over tea or over coffee, you have to know the language. You can't assume someone will know English, and you can't assume that the cultural norms are the same. Maybe there's a word used to indicate respect to an elder that they expect you to use. So we are very well aware that a culture will be so different, potentially, depending on who the individual is, someone from the US going overseas. So because we are definitely stressing that importance, we will work with a candidate in the Peace Corps to make sure they are trained in this. So for the first 3 months at Peace Corps, we actually train you on the language, and we train you on cultural norms, on the traditions, so you can integrate respectfully into the culture there. In terms of how that works in our recruitment and what we're looking for in a candidate, it certainly does help you stand out. It's not a requirement to know a foreign language nor to have been to a different country, but simply being able to indicate on your application, hey, I know I've navigated through a different situation. I've navigated an environment where there are people who do not have the same background as me. It doesn't have to be culture, maybe it can be socioeconomics, but understanding that it will be very different, and you recognize that that could be an area for you to grow in, and we like to see that transparency. So if you don't have it, that's okay, we will support you in that, but just know that if you do have it, it already makes you kind of like a little bit ahead of everyone. But don't be afraid if you don't have those skill sets just yet. We'll train you on them.
Wonderful. That's great to know that you're helping potential workers in your field master those skills. I try to do it on my side of things, which is language education, but it's great to know that you're also contributing to that. Ladarian, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I'll add in. So I'll separate my answer into two. So CARE, we have a presence now in the United States, but originally we worked overseas. So we have a presence now in about 100 different countries, which means country offices. So one really cool thing that CARE does that I think a lot of international organizations are doing, and I'm proud of, is that when they do open country offices, they ensure that people within that country who speak the language and understand the culture are hired by CARE to do the work there. Because the thought here is that and I'm going to speak from a US perspective, we don't ever want to go overseas to a different country and start a program that we can't be there for in the future to sustain. So the thought is to always help build programs with the communities there, and then they are there to continue on the program sustainability and impact on the community. So that's one really cool thing that happens there. I would say on our side here in the US, it's more of an understanding about cultures that is really important to my work here in the US. Most Americans that we work with speak English, and if they don't, they speak Spanish, and we have some people on the team who can help as interpreters. But for the communities that I've worked with before, they all speak English. So it's really more so about understanding their culture. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm from Indiana, which has a very different culture than California, than Georgia, than New York. So it's being able to understand the different nuances there and being open to understanding and learning more about different cultures. I will say I haven't had a chance to do Peace Corps, Jackie. I would have loved to, but I did study abroad and I got to do some internships and volunteer work overseas. And I also got to learn French and Arabic. And I will say for anyone interested in studying abroad, do it. It's super important. I think getting that language piece is so important to understanding people's culture. And it's a really unique experience, and it will open your mind. Although I've been back here in the US for several years now, I still take a lot of the learnings that I learned from overseas to me here. And it's really opened my mind up to just seeing people in a different way and seeing communities in a different way, especially when they have different practices or traditions than I do. So I think it's really important that you get out as much into the world and understand. I think here in the US, we are moving towards a place, which is great, to incorporate more diversity. I'm trying to get back in the works of learning another language again, which is hard, but I will always say that it's really important for us as Americans, if you don't know another language, to know another one and to spend as much time as you can learning them. I was in France, I think, for a month. And although I was super nervous to order like a baguette, right, in French, I did it. And I think people really appreciated that I tried, although I stumbled through some of the words. I'm pretty sure my accent sounded horrible, right? But people will appreciate if you try to understand their language and their culture.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Ladarian. These are great. This is great advice, and I can really relate to your answers. I'm French, as I probably mentioned at the beginning of this discussion. My dad is from Portugal. My mom is from Italy. So I've spent quite some time in those two countries. I moved to the United States when I was young, and I moved by myself. So I have my own share of cultural misunderstandings and culture shocks that I think could have been prevented had I known a little bit more about those communities, those cultures. So it's important to remember that we're talking about two different skills: language proficiency and cultural awareness. So thank you for reminding us of the importance of these two skills in your field and in your organization. So apart from language proficiency and cultural awareness, which we have just discussed, what are 2 or 3 qualities or skills that are most vital and valuable for success in your field and in your organization? Ladarian, would you like to tell us a little bit more about the skills that are needed other than language proficiency and cultural awareness for a successful career in your field?
Yeah, I would say the first one that immediately came to mind is team player. You really have to be a team player. So CARE, like I mentioned earlier, has 100, country offices around the world, and here in the US, it's been very fun. I've been with CARE, I think, for a little bit over a year now, to learn about my colleagues around the world and to also be a team player. So I would say that's the biggest thing when you work for a large international organization, because you're working with people overseas in different time zones who speak different languages, have different backgrounds and experiences. It's always important to remember that team player aspect, and it will help you as you navigate the space there. So that's a big one. I would say the other one that kind of ties into that is communication. Another thing I learned while at CARE, and before I was with CARE, I was with UNICEF, that's also a large organization, is that communication is key. I will admit, there are a lot of acronyms within the international development world. And I see Jackie smiling, which I'm assuming Peace Corps too has a lot of acronyms. And it's okay not to know what they are because a lot of them are made within the organization, right? So they're not typical acronyms you can go Google really quickly. And to be open and honest with your colleagues, with your supervisors, if you don't know something, to ask, because I'm telling you, you're going to run into so many acronyms that make no sense when you first see them. But once you learn them, you'll be able to use them and be more proficient when it comes to speaking with colleagues within your organizations. So that's the top two, I will say. I will say a third one that's just more of a fun one is that just be open to learning new things. I think this ties into your first question around, understanding cultures and languages. And you have to be someone who is interested in learning things that they don't know. And as long as you keep a curious mind, I like to say, you'll be successful within this role. And people will love to see that your curiosity is leading you to read articles about this issue. Like I mentioned earlier, CARE covers a lot of topics. Only one of them I understood previously before joining CARE, and that was really around kind of economic empowerment. I had done some research back in school around human trafficking, which kind of plays a role in like the informal market. So that's really the only topic I knew a lot about. But I've started to learn a little bit more about water and sanitation issues, or a little bit more about reproductive health and justice, which I think is going to help me in the long term staying with CARE to understand their programmatic work. So be curious, be a team player, and have really good communication skills.
Thank you, Ladarian. Jackie, would you like to tell us more about the skills needed for a successful career or job opportunity in your field?
Sure. I'll echo Ladarian's qualities that she shared, especially those acronyms. We have our own language at Peace Corps, it seems like, but in terms of other ones that we look for as well, someone who is motivated. We really want to see that you are motivated to do the work, because it can be very difficult sometimes. Maybe there's a great project and you've created it with the community, you're addressing the education needs at the school and you're working with everyone, everything looks perfect, but then the power goes out, so the meeting goes away and everything just falls apart after the other. So knowing that there is someone who can say, okay, this didn't work out right now, but tomorrow it can work, and like I'm ready to work later today or tomorrow. So we want someone who, despite challenges and roadblocks and maybe no's or maybes, even like sometimes turn into no's, that you're still motivated and committed for the work. In terms of other qualities, someone who is understanding, you're very empathetic to the cause, you can relate to people, someone who maybe you haven't been in that space ever before because you're going to a different country, and many times you might not be from that country, you don't understand the culture, but there are qualities and values you can understand. So we need you to really dig at the core and find that meaning and truly be present with the community in that way, and understand to some degree what could be happening and what you could do to work together to address the need in the community. And lastly, we're looking for someone who can accept feedback. If maybe you didn't do a good job, and if a community member lets you know, hey, Jackie, in this case, for example, I'll use my name, you didn't do a great job here, like we maybe didn't understand you, you didn't address the needs. We want to know that the person that accepts the feedback will take a moment, sit with it, and how will they change it? Because we don't expect you to have all the answers, and we will not ever promote that you will have all the answers. So we want someone who can take feedback, good, bad, criticisms, and can apply it differently the next time they get the chance. So those are the 3 additional qualities on top of what Ladarian mentioned that we are definitely looking for in some way on your application, or in an interview when you are applying to join us.
Wonderful. I think this is very helpful, and I just wanted to circle back around by maybe summarizing these skills and qualities that you have both mentioned, so our audience can maybe reflect on them after this panel. So Ladarian Gillette from CARE told us that CARE really is looking for team players and candidates who have great communication skills. And it sounds like the ability to learn a new language, which is CARE and also Peace Corps language and acronyms, being curious, being open to learning new things, things that you don't know, things you're not familiar with or comfortable with. And Jackie Valadez has, from Peace Corps, told us that Peace Corps is really looking for candidates that are motivated and committed as well. Candidates who can overcome challenge, that are candidates who are resilient, understanding, and candidates who have empathy. And also, lastly, someone who accepts feedback and has the ability to reflect and improve. Right? Would that be perfect? So many of the students in the audience may be interested in getting involved in your field, whether it's through an internship or more of a long-term position. So I was wondering if you could give the students in the audience any advice on some of the tangible steps they can take while still in school or after graduation to land a job in your field. We've already talked about skills, but I'm thinking more of tangible steps, for instance, community service or extracurricular activities. Ladarian, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can jump in here because I saw a question in the chat as well around this. So I would say for CARE, I wasn't able to do an internship with them before I started working with them, but I've heard that interning with CARE really does help you start to work for the organization. I think it's mostly because CARE is such a large organization. The earlier you can get in and understand like the work that they do and where they work at and the impact they have, the better, which is typically in that like student phase. So I would say keep an eye on internships. I'm happy to share my email in the chat. And if people have questions about the next internship cycle, I'm happy to answer them or get you connected. We actually just hired 2 interns, one from Spelman and one from Agnes Scott for the Innovation Hub. So they'll be coming on soon to help us. Another thing CARE does, since we started working here in the US, we host these weekly conversations called Tuesday Talks. They're a really cool way for you to learn about different social justice issues. I actually help to coordinate the speakers for it. And each week I make sure to have a CARE representative on the panel as well. So you can learn about CARE's work within that particular topic. So I can share that email as well. I think the more, or that link to that website, but the more you learn about an organization, the better. So when you do have an opportunity to either interview for an internship or a job with them, you can say, hey, I remember being a part of this great conversation, 6 months ago about this, and it really made me interested in your organization. They like to see that, right? They like to see that you've done your research and your homework because it really shows your curiosity and motivation around working for them. So I would say those are the tangible 2. Always keep an eye on internships in events or webinars that the organization is hosting that you can be a part of. It's actually a really good way to connect with people as well, because we host our Tuesday Talks every week via Zoom meeting. So you can easily chat with speakers or with CARE colleagues in the chat and reach out to them. A lot of them will share their email addresses with people and connect with them offline. So I would say those are my 2 kind of tangible steps for students.
Great, thanks. Jackie, would you like to tell us more about the steps that students can take while in school or after graduation to land a job in your field or organization?
Yeah, so if you would like to be involved with Peace Corps or in some capacity of international building or development, for us, some tangible steps that could be taken if you can are to take a foreign language. It's not a requirement for Peace Corps, but I know we've already shared that at the beginning, but I do want to stress the importance of it if you can. Another tangible step is to get involved. Don't just wait for something to pop up of like, oh, I'll get involved next school year, or, oh, I don't have this particular program in my community, in my school. If you're in college, if you're in high school, just start somewhere. We want to see that you have been involved in some way, shape, or form, that you have a history of being involved in your community, and you define what your community is. So we want to see that. Maybe it starts small with supporting a teacher with mentoring or tutoring fellow peer students. Maybe you're really great at language arts and you can help tutor them. That's what we want to hear about. Another thing you can do, maybe you can't volunteer because you just don't have time, then that part-time job that you have, try to build your leadership skills there. Try to, maybe you become the shift lead or something. We're not looking for one ideal candidate. We have to adapt to the person. So we do review every single thing you give us on your application. We are looking, okay, are they involved? They're not involved, but do they have a job? Okay, let's hear about the job. Are they a leader at their workplace? That's what we want to see. So we're trying to go through different outlets where you check off all these different boxes. We don't have the same ones for each person. We will tailor them to the person. And the last thing, of course, if you want to be involved with Peace Corps, specifically through our organization, get to know Peace Corps. Like Ladarian shared, that getting to know the organization does speak really highly of you, that you've taken the time to learn about Peace Corps. You can connect with me, or if wherever you are, there might be a recruiter near you, and learn about the roles, learn about the impact Peace Corps has had, learn about, get all your questions answered, because in the interview process, we will ask you, and someone who is not very familiar with Peace Corps, maybe they will not score as highly in the interview as someone who has done their research and kind of knows what to expect in Peace Corps, which is the unexpected always. But that's what I would recommend. Find ways to start just now. Don't put it off. Find ways to do it. And those are my tangible steps for someone, depending on where they are in their timeline right now.
Thanks. These are all great tips and advice for students in the audience. And again, I'd like to summarize some of the steps we've discussed. So learn about the organization and its impact, its missions, attend events and webinars that they offer. Both Peace Corps and CARE have several events that you can attend, and I believe we have the link in the chat to the weekly talks by CARE. Take a foreign language, and thanks, Jackie, for reminding students of that. This is particularly important for me as a language instructor. Get involved, volunteer, find ways to get involved in your community around you, and build also your leadership skills in your current position or current job. And finally, and that's a good transition for my next question, keep an eye on internship. So now that we've talked about the skills needed in your field and the steps that students can take to better prepare for a job in your career or in your organization, I was wondering if you could tell us more about the scholarship or internship opportunities that are available to students in your organization. Ladarian, since you've mentioned it, I don't know if you'd like to start.
Yeah, sure. I'll start.
Perfect.
So CARE is always looking for interns. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a few different programmatic areas we work in. So each of those departments is always looking for interns. So whether that's the WASH team, so the water, sanitation, hygiene group, or the food security team, or the innovation hub that I work for, we're typically always looking for 1 to 2 interns. I would say just keep an eye on CARE's website. It's care.org. They're always posting for internships, and it'll tell you what department they're looking for interns for. There might also be a general application up there. I think sometimes CARE will accept just general applications for you to let them know what you're interested in, and they can get you kind of put in contact with the correct person. So I would say take a look at the website. Like we've been mentioning earlier, just once you start to put your resume together, make sure to always kind of look at the job description or the internship description that's listed and pull out. What I like to do sometimes, get a highlighter and literally highlight keywords within the internship or job description. Then when you build your resume, make sure you try to incorporate those words into your resume. There is a little bit, if you guys don't know this, I think most of you are all students still, but there are sometimes algorithms that you have to beat when it comes to your application process. And sometimes the computer will look for certain words and phrases to pull out and then put those interns or those job applicants over to like the next round to be viewed by an actual person. As you can imagine, no HR department is like reading through 1,000 applications, right? It's only the 60 maybe that get through the algorithm. So always do your best to make sure that you tailor each resume for whatever you're applying to. I know it can be cumbersome sometimes, but it will help you get through those robots. I would say do that. Of course, language is always important. I saw a question in the chat around languages and internships. Here in the US, it's not typically a requirement to know another language for care, but if you're looking to work overseas in any of the country offices, it is a requirement. So I would say just make sure to take a look at the job description specifically or that country office's website, because it'll be different from care.org's website. Take a look and see what languages are needed in that region or that country or that area. And if you do know them, make sure to highlight it on your resume.
Wonderful. These are great tips. Thanks, Ladarian. Jackie, would you like to, is your organization offering any internship or scholarship opportunities for students?
So we do have a internship available to college students. So 4-year or 2-year, it's called the Peace Corps Campus Ambassador. And you would work closely with the Peace Corps staff member and a few staff members, and you would help build the awareness of Peace Corps. You help build that relationship between the school and the Peace Corps, the federal agency. So that is a great thing, especially if you are in high school, or maybe you are in college, your first year, and you have some time left. I would definitely keep an eye out for those applications. We accept them from all schools. So currently there is one at Georgia State University. I believe her contact information was posted in the chat if you want to reach out to her. She's a student peer, so it just builds a level of like, you're more comfortable maybe asking certain questions, and anything the person's unfamiliar with can reach out to me. In terms of a scholarship, we don't offer a scholarship per se, but we do have 2 options. So one is something, once you're officially accepted into Peace Corps and have completed everything, the Peace Corps will cover everything for you. So you don't have to worry about buying your flight to the country, the passport fee. We provide the passport, we provide the visa, the flights, luggage costs. And then once you get to the country itself, we cover everything from your monthly stipend, so that monthly allowance that you get, healthcare costs, everything. So we take on all the expenses. So it's about getting there first. And a potential scholarship opportunity that everyone is eligible for, but you still have to apply to, is open to anyone who serves in the Peace Corps. You have the opportunity to be a Peace Corps Coverdell Fellows. That means that there are institutions around the United States that have agreed to cover a minimum of 20% of your tuition, anywhere from 20% upwards to 100. And this is a great opportunity for anyone hoping maybe to get their master's or even a PhD, a certification, and you don't want to pay full price. So that is open to everyone who serves in the Peace Corps, and you are eligible for that for the rest of your life upon completion. And also, great tip from Ladarian, I highly recommend that to anyone. Look at the job that you potentially want and find those keywords and add them into your resume. We actually will review everyone's resume, so you can imagine how cumbersome that can be, us looking at them. So make it easy for us, highlighting those keywords. Work with the recruiter if you are interested in Peace Corps to know how to format your resume, because we're looking at so many all the time that anything that is streamlined, it's already a big plus for you.
Thank you very much. So so both CARE and Peace Corps offer internship opportunities. I believe we posted some links in the chat for students who are interested, and I agree, that's a great tip to really tailor and personalize your resume for each application. I did not know that we had computers and robots looking for those keywords. So make sure you highlight those keywords and include them in your resume. That's a great tip. So this is a great time for me to remind students in the audience that you have the opportunity to ask questions in the Q&A. We will go over these questions in a few minutes. Make sure that you include the name of the person you're asking your question to, so we can ask this question directly to the right panelist. And we have about 5 minutes left for this discussion before we start the Q&A. So I'd like to ask you one final question, maybe a more personal question. Could you tell us more about what inspired you to get into this field, and what is the most valuable lesson that you have learned over the course of your career? Oh, Jackie, I'm sorry, you're muted.
I was thinking for a second, but it
Oh,
came.
I'm sorry.
I thought I saw Ladarian. We were both like thinking. But for me, what really pushed me to want to get involved with the Peace Corps was hearing about it. The moment I heard about it, I knew I wanted to do it. So I'm born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and I went to school in Georgia. And then my whole life there was always like, I want to go back. My parents aren't from this country, so I always thought I need to find a way to go and support the communities that produced me and where my family still is. Most of my family is still either in Mexico or in El Salvador. So, but I'm young. I had all these like, no, but it doesn't fit in my plan. I have a plan. Where am I going to find time to go for more than a week or two? So in my freshman year, I heard about Peace Corps and something about the fact that it was for 2 years, but it's a federal program and everything is kind of established. And I just have to have the skill set to go and obviously apply. Like something about it, the fact that it wasn't it wasn't a very study abroad. It's more like you have to really integrate to do the work. That's what I wanted. I didn't want to feel like a visitor somewhere. Of course, there will always be an aspect of you being a visitor in some way, but I didn't want to feel like I'm going somewhere, but I'm staying in a nice hotel, but I go and work here for 8 hours and come back. So that's why I wanted to be involved. I thought, hey, if I can make it out to Central America, South America, great, but I'm not tied to it. If any way I can just share in the privilege that I have of just being born in this country and haven't been able to go to a university here, like I want to some way support in that way, any way I can. So that's what drew me to Peace Corps. I was accepted. I got to go to Panama, and I did my service term for 2 years while in Panama. It was truly something so beautiful. The first and last thing I think about every day, and it motivates me here at Peace Corps every day to work. In terms of what was it, the moment, or can you repeat that, Matthias, the last bit of the question?
Sure. I was asking about the most valuable lesson that you've learned in your career so far.
Yeah, the most valuable lesson I have learned was to definitely, and it might sound so cliche, but is to never judge a person by their appearance. I think it spoke so truly in Peace Corps. I am someone, maybe you can't see it today, I am a stickler for Black clothing and neutrals. And I go to and then I go to Panama, and the community I was assigned to, so beautiful. Like everyone would wear so many colors, and they all looked at me like, why are you wearing black, Jackie? Are you sad? Are you mourning? What's going on? Even my host family, they didn't know how to approach it. And even vice versa, there were some things that I thought my host family, I heard them say, and I thought, this is not going to work out. Day one, we're already off to a bad start. But as I broke that relationship down, as we started to get into the core, it definitely was like, oh my God, like here we are. If I would have written you off on day one, and vice versa, if they would have written me off, we would have never established the great relationship we have. So that is what I will say at the core. When I meet someone, I know sometimes it just takes time to understand someone, and I hope people can remember that. But for me, that's the most valuable part that I learned from my Peace Corps service, is to take time to build that relationship and that perception of someone else.
Thanks, Jackie. Ladarian, would you like to tell us more about what inspired you to get into the field? And I would also like, before we continue, to mention that we have a third panelist that joined us, Susan Hires, who is representing the CDC, and I'll give her the opportunity to introduce herself in just a second. So the audience, just know that we have a third panelist, and if you have any questions that are addressed to the CDC or Susan Hires, please ask them in the Q&A. So Ladarian?
Yeah, so I grew up in a family with a lot of women. So women's empowerment, women's equality and equity was always super important to me. I came here to Atlanta and went to all women's college, went to Spelman, did a lot of research around women, and really had a lot of praise for organizations like CARE that put women and girls at the forefront of all their work, no matter what the specific topic is. So I think that's what really inspired me to work for CARE. A lot of the research and data that I used for like my final papers came from CARE, which was great. to see the work that they did abroad. And when I learned that they were starting to do work here in the United States, I was just super excited to be a part of that new movement and that outreach. So I would say that's what really inspired me to work for CARE. I would say one of the lessons I've learned, and I probably learned this a while ago, but now it hits home a little bit more, is just to stay passionate. Whatever, organization you go to work for, whatever topic is of interest to you, just always stay passionate. I think a lot of us struggled a little bit through COVID just to kind of take care of ourselves personally and take care of ourselves professionally or within school, right? Making sure you're still going to your classes, doing your schoolwork, just staying on top of life in general. That I think a little bit of the passion kind of died out. So I would say always stay passionate. It will make your work that much more enjoyable, and it will always constantly remind you that you're not getting up to do just a regular 9 to 5, but you're getting up to, enhance women's equality or enhance racial equity or, whatever field you go into. Just make sure you always keep that passion, because I had a lot of it. I'm not saying I don't now, but I had a lot of it when I was in school, and you start to get a little bit older and other things start to play a role in your life. And sometimes passion starts to take a back seat. It should never take a back seat. So take it from me. So whenever you're feeling down or, unsure of what to do next, just remember why you got into the field, either the major you're studying or the country that you studied abroad in. Remember those reasons and remind yourself of it daily so that you don't lose that fire.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ladarian. And I'd like to welcome Susan Hires, who is representing the CDC. Good afternoon, Susan. Would you like to introduce yourself before we move on to the Q&A?
Sure. Yes. I just want to apologize first for being late. There's some technical difficulties that happened earlier. Thank you for Christy for inviting me. So my name is Susan Hires, and I am from Georgia. I attended Agnes Scott College in Decatur. I started out in the laboratory there, and I was focusing on molecular genetics. Eventually I moved up to Boston for my first job, and that's where I sort of started to interact with a lot of international scientists. Eventually I found myself in Alaska because I thought I wanted to be a marine biologist, and then ultimately found my way back to Atlanta to go back to school for public health at Emory University. So I have a master's in public health. Now I work in global health at the CDC, specifically in immunization and respiratory diseases. My primary projects are in West Africa, so I've been learning French for the past 3 years. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you very much, Susan Hires. We're really happy to have you this afternoon with us. So I will now move on to the Q&A. We've had quite a few questions, so we may not have time to cover all these questions, but I believe you have a way to contact our panelists directly if your question is not answered. Looking at the list, I see that some of those questions were addressed already. More specifically, what advice would you have for someone interested in joining your organization? We have already discussed that, so I hope that we have covered this question. Now, the next question is for Ladarian Gillette with CARE. How realistic is it for a college student, summer internship or grad job with second language proficiency to get a CARE internship or job abroad? What are the hiring prerequisites? What is the application process? How long does it take? And I'll combine it with the next question. Is a college degree required to work for your organization?
I'll start with the second question because that's a little bit easier. I don't work in HR, but I'm pretty sure on all of the job posts that a degree is required. Now, whether it's a bachelor's and a master's or just a bachelor's, you'd have to just kind of read the fine print there. So I would say just make sure to keep an eye on what's needed to be successful in that role. On the internships, I will say here in the US, language proficiency outside of English is not mandatory or needed because we work here in the US. But if you're looking for internships overseas, that's something you would have to check with that country office. So I mentioned earlier, and I think we dropped the care.org website in the chat. That is for CARE USA. So you would have to find, if you want to say CARE Uganda, work within their office and be an intern, you would have to go to their website and go to the jobs that are posted and see what the requirements are. I do believe in some other countries, you will have to know the language of that country, which, you know, makes sense, right? So I would say just take a look there. As far as being successful, I think as long as you've demonstrated in your background, one, the language that's needed, but also the skill set that's needed. So if they're looking for somebody to come onto the water and sanitation team, if you have done an internship or done a specific course on water and sanitation, of course, that's going to help your application move a little bit to the top. So I would say always take a look at the internships that are posted and make sure that whichever one you're applying to really aligns with your background and that's highlighted through your resume. As far as how long it takes, I think interns are usually brought on every semester, and then the summer is like a third hiring. So I believe they probably do calls for applications maybe 2 months in advance, and then interview rounds a month in advance, and then you kind of start at the beginning of the fall or spring or summer. So I know that probably doesn't help too much. It's a little tricky, but I would say just typically HR will post when they're planning to have the person start and when the interviews will take place. If they don't post that, if it's CARE, feel free to reach out to me and I can do some internal digging and figure out like, when do you need this person to start? And if I don't know, I can find somebody within the team who will know.
Great, thanks, Ladarian. The next question is for Jackie. Are you able to choose when or where you are working at Peace Corps, or is it assigned to you?
So you can certainly choose where you would like to go and what point you would like to go. On the application itself, there will be a page where you can indicate the specific type of work. We call it a sector or maybe like a field. You can indicate that, and you can also indicate the geographic region you would like to go to, and lastly, the day you will be available. Definitely, I would recommend being flexible because we are in an ongoing pandemic. Maybe you really want to go to Morocco, but we're going to ask that maybe you be a little bit flexible and consider other countries because we just can't be sure we can get you out into the field right away. So I will encourage flexibility. I do want to touch on a question. You do not need to have a college degree to join Peace Corps. We ask that you have a 4-year degree or have 5 years of professional experience. What we consider professional experience is anything post high school. So if you work for 5 years in a related field to Peace Corps, we can absolutely consider that in place of a 4-year degree.
Great, thank you, Jackie. So the next question is for Jackie and Ladarian, and I would also like to add Susan to this question. Susan, if you'd like to add anything. Is there an age requirement working for your organizations? What is the minimum age requirement?
Okay, for the CDC, as with all federal agencies, if you go to USA Jobs, you can get an idea of the different grade levels. I believe the minimum age is 16, actually. So there are opportunities for people who are in college, early, late teens, early 20s. But all that information can be found at USA Jobs. I'll write that in the chat.
Perfect, thanks. Thanks, Susan. Jackie, Ladarian, would you like to answer that question as well?
Okay, I'll go. Mine is really quick. I'm pretty sure our minimum age is 18. So for internships, you have to be enrolled in school and at least be 18, and for jobs as well, at least 18.
If you would like to be the intern at Peace Corps with our Campus Ambassador program, you have to be enrolled at school. If you would like to be a Peace Corps volunteer, the requirement is that you be at least 18 years old.
Thank you. The next question is actually a great question. It has been a busy and extremely difficult past few years globally in regards to public health. How has your intercultural experience and language skills helped you navigate the unique challenges that the COVID pandemic has posed to you in your work? So it's not addressed to anybody specifically. So anyone who wants to go ahead and answer this question, I think it's a really interesting question.
I'm happy to jump in here. I started with CARE during the pandemic. So I've never been in the office with everybody and met everyone in person. And I think one of the parts of this question is around, your experience and language skills, not necessarily the intercultural experience, but the language skills in particular. I mentioned earlier that communication is a really, really big asset and a good skill to have when working for a large organization. And when I started during the pandemic, I started just reaching out to people via email or through Microsoft Teams, which is like our chat system, to set up meetings with them and learn more about their work. And that's just something, I'm a little outgoing, but just using my language skills around, hi, I don't mean to take up too much time of your day, but would you be open to having a 30-minute chat with me about reproductive health and justice, work of CARE? And people were super receptive to that. Like I mentioned earlier too, I think everyone's in this weird pandemic phase of like, how do I navigate personal life and professional life? That people were honestly, I think, excited to have new people join and want to learn about their work, right? And help onboard them in a virtual setting. So I think that really helped me kind of find my path at CARE. Where currently still our office is closed because of COVID. So I still have not had the opportunity, I probably won't this year, to meet most of my colleagues in person. But I've met a lot of them on Zoom. We've done some happy hours after 5 on Zoom. We've done some outdoor like lunches that just in, thinking of safety concerns. So I think just making sure that you're always kind of willing to put yourself out there a little bit. People are typically like really receptive to it. And I got a lot of positive feedback around, I'm so excited you reached out to us and want to learn more. So I would say, don't feel afraid to put yourself out there a little bit. Just always know that we're all in this together. So no one's expecting anyone to be a certain way or to come onto a job and not have the same type of onboarding that has been traditional to a lot of these organizations.
Thanks, Darian. I would like to give Jackie Velades or Susan Hires the opportunity to jump in and answer that question, maybe if you'd like, before we move on to the next question. So that was about, the question was about how has your intercultural experience and language skills helped you navigate the unique challenges that the COVID pandemic has posed to you in your work?
So I would just say that for my work, we weren't, I guess it's February 2020, we weren't allowed to travel abroad and go on our normal tours of duties. And so for us, in my work specifically, we haven't been able to work with our partners as much as we have, I normally would. And one good thing I would say is that, throughout your career, you're going to be building relationships. And when you feed and care for those relationships, you find out, how worthwhile they are when you aren't able to interact with those people as much as you normally would. Meaning that they're so integral to keeping the relationship together, maintaining mutual respect and transparency. So those are the types of things that I think, when you have a certain kind of stress to your workflow, it's just really falling back on and relying on the fact that your partner, your team in the global space is going to be able to reach out to you if they know they can trust you about certain things. So.
Here at Peace Corps, so I work for Peace Corps now, transition out of being a volunteer and work for Peace Corps. So just about everyone here did Peace Corps. So it's kind of like finding very similarly minded individuals. So we're always willing to have coffee chats. It's almost like we brought the Peace Corps with us back. We kind of never left. So I think it definitely does create like an echo chamber where we're all so willing, so outgoing to have those virtual hangouts, kind of like the Darian had shared. But it definitely does create certain challenges because Peace Corps volunteers do tend to be very people to people person, usually we will find. So navigating the space has been a little bit challenging for us because we can't really be people to people. We have to be people to computer. And that in itself is a challenge with many colleagues and I. So we're still trying to get through it. Like many of you, I'm not going to say we're 100% perfect in figuring it out, but just know that we're in an ongoing pandemic and we recognize that. So some things have had to change, and we look forward to the days we can all kind of reunite once again, whenever that is.
Whenever that is. Yeah. So thank you to the three of you for those answers. I'll move on to the next question in the interest of time. And this question it will be for Susan Hires from the CDC. Does one need to have background in public health, or does the CDC recruit for other degrees as well?
Sure, yes, the CDC does recruit for other degrees as well. For instance, in the field of communications, hard sciences, math, economists, policy developers. There's a whole wide array of degrees that are used here at CDC. It does help if you do have some overlay previously in public health, but I would encourage you to go to USA Jobs, that, like I mentioned, and just take a look at some of the entry level positions and get an idea. But there's just a wide array of experiences from which the agency draws from. So it's not just public health.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Susan Hires. I see that some questions are being answered directly by our panelists as well. I have just a few minutes left, so I'll ask one last question, and this is to address to the three of you. Because of travel limitations during this pandemic, do you offer any online internships?
For me, I don't know about that. I don't think we do, but I'm happy to look that up and get back to whomever asked the question.
Sure. Thanks, Susan. Jackie, Ladarian, would you like to jump in?
Jackie, you go. Oh, you go ahead, Jackie.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ladarian. Thank you. We do offer the Campus Ambassador program. Again, I had shared that already. That can be an option, but you have to wait for the applications to open, typically in the spring. Now, if you're interested in something else, there is a virtual service pilot program through the Peace Corps where you're able to volunteer, but virtually. So you support communities through the computer, through a virtual interface. I believe that is open to individuals who did Peace Corps first because they're kind of testing out some options. So not open to the general public just yet, but I will have to double check that. But that's something that especially people who did Peace Corps and do want to volunteer still, that's how they are remaining involved.
Yeah, and currently our office is closed, it looks like, for the rest of the year. So the 2 interns that we're hosting this semester will be virtual. Now, next year, if things change a little bit in the spring, then they would be required to come in person. I think it's typical that most interns come into the office at least twice a week.
Thanks. And I'll ask one last question. I see that we have 2 minutes left. Does the CDC have internships or pathways to entry positions? Is this the best way to get a foot in the door? Susan Hires, could you, I'm assuming this question is addressed to you.
Yes, I'm sorry. My connection went out for a little bit there. Can you repeat that? I apologize. I know we're low on time. Yeah.
Sure. Let me see.
Sorry.
Let me try to, the question disappeared. So here it is. Does the CDC have internships or pathways to entry positions? Is this the best way to get a foot in the door?
Yes, so I would say ORISE fellowships, and I'll write that down. ORISE stands for the Oak Ridge Research Institute. I'll look up the website and send it. But yes, that's a good place to start. A lot of people also join contracting companies. They'll start out as an entry-level contractor, and they'll sort of work their way up and then switch over from a contractor to a federal employee.
Wonderful, thank you, Susan. So I believe we have answered all questions from the Q&A. If you have more questions, you have our panelists' contact information. And I would like to thank Ladarian Gillette, Susan Hires, and Jackie Valadez for joining us this afternoon. This concludes today's Humanitarian and Global Health panel. On behalf of CULTR, I thank you all for joining us. A reminder that recordings of the panel discussions this week will be made available after the event. I invite you to complete the post-event survey available right after this Zoom session closes. The next World Languages Week discussion is the Study Abroad Scholarship Opportunities panel, which will take place tomorrow from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you very much to all of you. Have a wonderful afternoon. And again, thank you, Ladarian. Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks.